Okay. So anyway, everyone, Happy New Year. The Chinese New Year I think just passed 7 days, 8 days now. Yeah. Let us just resume our reading. I think we finished it by last time, maybe December, maybe I guess. So we have almost 2-month break, and then from chapter 7, the Buddhist path, and then today we are going to discuss one of the boring subjects. Maybe some people think it's very exciting, but I used to teach this, and I think it's very boring to me anymore. So some people think, but I'm saying that it's just my personal view. It's called the Abhidharma. So the higher teachings. When I say boring, I don't mean that it's looked down in a way. It's just like it's very complicated. And it's always very challenging when you start to study this subject. And we're still reading a book called The Foundations of Buddhism. And anyway, so let's just, again, why don't we just go through it first, what this author, the Professor Rupert Gethin, writes about. And then we can have some discussion. And of course, if you have questions, we can even, asking some question what it is Abhidharma is. All right, the title is called the Abhidharma. But when you look at the term, which is a common term that we use, called with the art here, Abhidharma. But in Pali, sometimes if you happen to read, sometimes we differentiate whether you are mostly influenced by the Sanskrit word, like Mahayana Buddhism, or you are mostly influenced by the Pali word. So, the Theravada Buddhism, so-called. And then you will find the term called Abhidharma, without the R, okay? And rather than change R into M, so it's just the language differences, okay? Anyway, I guess Rupert Gethin just write the title here using the most common way of using as a Sanskrit word, Abhidharma. So maybe just because the book here actually, even though many focus on the Theravada tradition as the Pali, but then also because he does cover some other aspect, tradition too. That's why that's the reason why he used the Sanskrit word, the Abhidharma, and he translated Abhidharma as the higher teaching. Okay. All right, why don't we just begin? We read the paragraph first. Sometimes we will skip some certain paragraph if we think that we don't need to read it. But in order to just, especially for people who haven't read it first, so it might be good that just read through it. Okay. Where we want to start from? Want to start here?
Okay. It is told by some that after the Buddha again awakening, he sat beneath the tree of awakening for 7 days, contemplating the Dharma which he had penetrated. Then he got up from his seat, and for 7 days he stood gazing with unblinking eyes at the seat, thinking, of this seat I gained knowledge. At that time, the gods thought that perhaps the Buddha still had something to accomplish. As it appeared, he had not abandoned attachment to the seat of awakening. So the Buddha performed the miracle of the pears, emitting streams of fire and water from every pore of his body. Then for 7 days he walked up and down between the seat of awakening and where he had been standing. Now 21 days after he had gained awakening, he sat in the house of jewels, so-called, because here, over 7 days, he conceived the 7 books of the Abhidharma, the jewels of the Dharma. On the 7th day, when he began to contemplate the contents of the 7th book, the great book, his body began to emit rays of 6 colors: blue, yellow, red, white, maroon, clear. And as he contemplated this infinite and immeasurable Dharma, the rays emitted from his body lit up the earth, the waters, and the skies. They lit up the realms of the gods and flooded beyond throughout billions of world systems.
Okay. So, usually when we start to understand the Abhidharma, we know Abhidharma as one of the, take it as one of the canon. When you study Buddhism, you always must It's not. It's unlike other religions. So you have only maybe one so-called a Quran or the Bible, just one. But in the Buddhist, what do we call, or you could say holy text, whatever. So, and those material are in the Buddhist system that the material are divided into three, what we call a canon. Sometimes we say the three baskets, because in old day the texts are being written down on a certain type of form, like on a bark, the leaf, bark tree, the skin of the tree, or on a certain kind of palm leaf. Okay. So and then they might be string it, like keep it, because actually in even earlier time the texts have never been written down, it was just oral transmission. So anyway, from a very earlier time, we know that the system that how we divide into three, one is what we call, if everyone remember what we call Vinaya, right? It means the discipline code. It's all about, mostly it's about the monastic members, for the monastic monks, so that, you know, all these discipline, how the discipline been laid down by the Buddha, or even whatever, what kind of thing happened, and what sort of thing that people are not following the rules and so forth, you know, what sort of this, I won't say punishment, it's more like how to resolve those problems and so forth, you know, that's the Vinaya. And usually people, I mean, especially layperson, are not interested in reading that. And even in a certain tradition, like in China, later on, I don't know how they invent the system that you are not allowed to read that too. But that definitely never happened in other traditions, but in China, but I need to say that again and again, especially if you're Chinese, that definitely is not the rule of Buddhism, but then somehow I don't know why in China then that become a rule, that you, as a layperson, you can read that kind of canon. And then the second one, which is, some people put that as the first one, different traditions put that as the most important. That's why we mentioned that first as the sutta. I mean, we are going to mention that. Please remember the term sutta. It's different from like in Quran, the sutra. It's a surah or what. But basically sutra, I mean, a kind of thread also. Can sometimes mean thread, you know, thread. And so the sutra, you have many, sutra is a Sanskrit word, sutta as a Pali. So when you hear people say sutta or sutra, but it's just the matter of whether you want to use Pali or use Sanskrit word. Okay. So, and that's as a big collection as well. So then have included in one of the canon. Now the third one is called Abhidhamma. So Abhidhamma, we're going to talk about later. Anyway, Abhidhamma is one of the canon. I guess it's best maybe to understand even Abhidhamma, we are going to mention that later, that you have 7-volume text called the fundamental Abhidhamma text. Still, first we start to understand what the term Abhidhamma is. It's the same thing like when you say sutta, what does the sutta or doctrine, what does the doctrine mean? Okay. All right, it's believed that the Abhidhamma was taught by the Buddha. Of course, this is arguable, because for a scholar, definitely we don't believe that. For a scholar, we don't believe Abhidhamma was taught by the Buddha. But that's a tradition always saying that, because during the Buddha's time, basically we know that the Buddhist texts have 3 canons, as I say, the Vinaya canon, the Sutta canon, and the Abhidhamma canon, right? And there's no doubt that the Buddha did lay down the rules. So whether everything that nowadays we have is completely taught by the Buddha, said by the Buddha, we don't know. But for sure, quite a large number of it definitely was taught by the Buddha. And that a lot of things happened during the Buddha's time, you know, and that record in the Vinaya. Okay, all right, into Vinaya. When you're studying the West, you don't want to follow a tradition. They will say, okay, everything is taught by the Buddha, okay? In the West, everything is have to base on proof, chronological argument, and all sort of thing. You know, it's even not in the West, even in Sri Lanka. Actually, if you study there in Sri Lanka, unless you are in Burma or Thailand, they don't want to talk that way, because traditionally the thing is, it's kind of offend to the name of the Buddha. So if you say that way, but in Sri Lanka, it's okay. You can say it. You know, So I would just follow the Shankan way, even though people may not necessarily online people when they read me again and they don't like what I said, but it's okay. I'm telling you, in Sri Lanka, it's very common to say that. So, and the sutta mean the doctrine, or you could say the main body usually. So, and then as a canon, is certainly mostly that were taught by the Buddha, and some of them actually addressed or delivered by his famous disciples. Okay, and then now what we call Abhidhamma now. So now usually we understand Abhidhamma as a kind of canon. So that you have the canon of Vinaya, canon of Sutta, and then you have the canon of the Abhidhamma, or your basket of Vinaya, or the Vinaya basket, or Sutta basket, or Abhidhamma basket. Okay, but we here. Of course, as I said, traditionally we know that we have Tripitaka, we have three baskets, what we call the Tripitaka. But then now we must understand Abhidhamma as one of the baskets. But certainly, if you look at the historical way of looking at it, it's quite doubtful that whether the Abhidhamma is there during the first. What we call the first council, mean that after the Buddha passed away, 3 months after the Buddha, 3 months passed away, then the monks gathered together, trying to remember what the Buddha said, and combine into kind of arrange it or combine it into a system, or one of the system. That's why you have the Vinaya and you have the Sutta, and Abhidhamma is really dubious for the scholar that actually that exists during the Buddha's time. Okay. Anyway, however, a lot of things is very hard to, when you come to a belief system, a lot of things is very hard to address, but still, the story say that the Buddha, after he can awakening, because that's a way also to justify how important the Abhidhamma is, okay. So I might be kind of put down again a little bit, and some people try to glorify it, and you can listen to different kind of people approach, okay? Don't necessarily have to follow my approach on it, but I just want to tell you. And then it's believed that, after the Buddha gained enlightenment, he'd been spending 49 days in that surrounding, or that kind of area. So even now, if you go to India, even though it was a ruin for almost 900 century, more than that actually, almost 900 century. But now it's become a tourist reason, and it's become, it's very popular nowadays. Of course, for religious people like Buddhists, certainly think it's a very important place. And then if you go there, and you will find there's a Bodhi tree, and around the Bodhi tree you'll find there's a pond there. And then you also find, they say, this is where the Buddha sit in the Bodhi tree, and this is where the Buddha used after enlightenment the second week. And he's sitting there for the whole week under the Bodhi tree, like enjoy his enlightenment. And then the next 7 days, they were just standing looking at the Bodhi tree and enjoy and kind of appreciate what the Bodhi tree is about. That's how the story is said. And when I say story, I mean actually is mentioned in the commentary, particularly, for example, like in the Jataka Nidana, that the commentary is not commenting the Jataka story, but it's kind of prologue, what you call preface. The preface of the Jataka. Jataka is as one of the Buddhist texts, okay? And he have a long story about the life, how he vowed to become a Buddha, and now he become a Buddha after when he get enlightenment, what happening, If you are interested, actually, you could get all this book. That's luckily somebody have Jaya Vikrama, one of the Sri Lankan translate is the story of Gautama Buddha from the Jataka Nidana. Okay, it's original from Pali. Unless you read Pali commentary, and the commentary Pali usually is very difficult to read. Okay, so he translate only that part, that like a preface part of the Jataka. So that includes basically when the Buddha was in the past life. It was particularly when he met one of the previous Buddha, and that's an important story, because that is the story determined that what we know that nowadays called the Sakyamuni Buddha or Gautama Buddha be the Buddha, because after the prediction came, and then he kind of like then he started to fulfilling his perfection, what we call a paramita. Okay. Anyway, so if you like, you could just actually to find the story of Gautama Buddha. I really like this kind of book more than the present people writing. But I think recently I just read only very recently somebody published a book. I know, but it's not published yet. Someone actually write the life of Buddha based on his practice experience as well. Because that's unfortunately nowadays when the people write the story of the Buddha, the story of the Gautama Buddha, usually they write it in a very, I think it's not that enough. Like if you look at all religion, one day if we have the chance to look at all religious biography, the Buddha actually has the most extensive record of what he did in the past. But I guess Buddhism is a little different because it doesn't like ambiguous thing. Like if you study Abhidhamma later, never ambiguous. Everything have to be so precise, So, and that's one thing is greatness, the great thing when you study Buddhism, because at least you know who he is, what did he come from, what did he face, where did he go, what sort of thing happened to him, And that given that kind of culture, do not be surprised by that. You have to understand Indian culture. Indian people don't care those things. Even now, sometimes, when you talk about a teacher, oh, he's a Greek master, that's it. Where he was born, how he was, what did he go, what did he learn a thing, any difficulty he faced in the past is not matter, okay? Even now. Imagine, but that in the Buddhism, I guess they learn a lot from that kind of culture in India, because they don't like history, no record of any history. But I guess Buddhism was quite aware of what differences they were when they really. Why I want to say this a lot, because we face a lot of problem nowadays here, even in America, saying that Buddhism is as one branch of a Hindu. That completely definitely is not the case. Okay. But that way claiming the Sikhism or the what other thing, like even the Jainism was one of the branches. Definitely not true. Okay, everyone if know in Indian religion. So anyway, okay. Now we're back to what I was saying. Okay, we're back to this the story. So anyway, we must know the legend said, according to a record here, even said after he again enlightenment, he was in 49 days, 1 week sitting there, 1 week looking at the Bodhi tree, 1 week just doing walking meditation. And then another week, he was kind of sitting in the house, what we call a house of jewel, or sometimes we translate a shrine of jewel. But there are so many different interpretations for that. Some people say the house of jewel represents the essence of the teaching, but sometimes say the house of jewel actually really mean a place. Okay, but what did he do in the house of jewel, or what does the house of jewel represent? He here did mention actually that time he was thinking about the content of the teachings. That means the Abhidhamma. Okay, so it's a kind of way to justify. Actually, the Buddha from the very early time think about Abhidhamma. Okay, and then also the other story is about, and he did after several years, after certain years, and then he visited his mom. His mom passed away when he was born. 7 days after, right? So he visited his mom, who believed that who were born in the heavens called 33 heavens. The name of the heaven is called Dhammadipa, mean 33 heavens. Actually mean it divided into almost like the 33 territoria. Okay, and then and he went there just kind of like pay the respect, or to thank her mom, his mom, sorry, and then he just delivered this Abhidhamma teaching. So along with the divine beings, and it's also a way of saying that actually this teaching is really high. and it's only suitable for very intelligent people, like the divine beings. And then when it came down, yeah, please come in, yeah.
Oh, hi. See you.
We will have a little time for you to introduce each other. Can you just sit down first? Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, and then what happened? Yes, here did he mention? I think he did. Okay, I guess I'm not going to say that next thing about the performance, the supernatural power. Yeah, he did say that he visited his mom. And then later he came back, and told, okay, why don't we just read it? Yeah, so, yeah.
The Buddha did not, it seems, immediately teach the Dharma in this full form in which he had conceived it while seated in the House of Jewels. Many years later, in response to a challenge from teachers of other schools, the Buddha once again performed the miracles of the pears, emitting streams of fire and water from every pore of his body. Having performed this miracle, he considered what previous Buddhas had done after performing this miracle. It came to his mind that they had ascended to the heaven of the 33 gods to teach the Dharma to their mothers. And so, in keeping with this tradition, the Buddha ascended to the heavens of the 33 gods, and there, seated beneath the coral tree on the rock called Ardhakambala, the throne of the great god Sakka, for the 3 months of the rains, he taught his mother and assembled the gods the 7 books of the Abhidhamma.
All right, thank you. And the next one?
Okay. At that time, the Buddha would create a mind-made Buddha to carry on teaching while he went to gather alms food in the distant land of Uttarakuru. Then he would sit down on the shores of Lake Anuttata, eat his meal, and retire to sit in meditation in a forest of sandal trees. And Sariputta, the disciple chief in wisdom, would come and the Buddha would teach him the method of Abhidhamma. Sariputta in turn taught it to 500 of his own pupils. They say that many aeons ago, in the time of the Buddha Kassapa, they had been born as bats, and hanging in the cave, they had one day heard the sound of 2 monks reciting the Abhidhamma. Of course, as bats, they were unable to understand the meaning of what they heard. Yet, even so, it seems that the very sound of the Abhidhamma left an impression. So they were reborn in the world of the gods, where they remained for the vast interval of time between one Buddha and the next. Finally, they were born as men and become monks, and the pupils of Sariputta, who teaching them the 7 books, made them master of Abhidhamma.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Any comment? Just the legend and story.
Just one quick question. Why is that between different intervals, it's always 7 days and 7 days and 7 days? Is there any meaning for that?
I don't know.
It does reflect what's said in the Bible about creationism.
Right, yeah, for the 7 days too, right? Yeah. I don't know. Okay, no any question, we can just read further. I mean, it's certainly, that's how the Pali way of understanding how the Abhidhamma is being passed down. But if you learn from the other tradition, like what we call the Northern Buddhist tradition as a Chinese, they also have Abhidhamma as well. But I don't think that they don't have those stories upon. Because they don't have these kind of legends there also. That's the reason why but there's a common story about the Buddha did disappear for a little while. And that time he disappeared, what did he taught? Where did he go? And what did he do? And that certainly I guess is certainly is very popular, very famous for the Buddhist circle, even from the very old day, because then you can hear this kind of story comes to, for example, in China they say it differently, in Tibet they say it differently. So, it kind of like it's very clear that it's believed that the Buddha did disappear a little while when he ascended himself to the heaven, you know. And even if you go to India, actually, you still have one of the great place to worship. It's believed that that's where he on that platform, he ascend himself to the heaven, you know. Okay. Okay. Right. Let us go to the next paragraph. The term Abhidharma.
The term Abhidharma, Pali Abhidharma, means approximately higher or further dharma. For Buddhist tradition, it refers to two things. First, a set of books regarded by most ancient schools as the word of the Buddha, and as such forming the content of the third basket of scriptures, the Abhidharma Pitaka. Second, the particular system of thought and method of exposition set out in those books and their commentaries. The above legend of Genesis of the Abhidharma is drawn from the Theravadic sources, but the sentiment is indicative of a more general, traditional attitude to the Abhidharma. The Abhidharma is thought out and taught only by a Buddha. Hearing it being recited, even without understanding it, can have a far-reaching effect. The Abhidharma catches the very essence of the Dharma, which means that its sound can operate almost as a charm or spell.
Okay. Well, anyone want to continue?
Oh, you want me to?
Yeah, do you want to continue to read that? Yeah.
The suggestion in the legend that the form in which the Abhidharma has come down to us has been mediated through the person of the Sariputra, perhaps reflects the historical reality that the canonical Abhidharma, say it again?
Abhidharma.
Abhidharma works must be regarded as somewhat later than the sutra material of the Nikayas, Agamas, and in part explains why some schools of thought, such as the Sutra
Sautran. No sutra.
Sautranikas,
Yeah.
sorry guys, those who follow the teachings of the sutras, later declined to give the Abhidharma works the status of the word of the Buddha. See chapter 2. The two canonicals Abhidharma collections that survive are those of the Theravadins and the Sarvastivadins, the latter only in Chinese translation. All the books of the Theravadin Abhidharma, with the exception of the Yamaka, have been translated into English. The Sarvastivadin, am I saying that right?
Yeah, good.
Canonical Abhidharma works remain untranslated into a modern European language.
All right, thank you. Any comment?
I thought it's translated. Your teacher translated it.
It's a which French, right? Not the
Sarvastivadin.
No, he didn't translate it the whole. No. He only compiled the book. He didn't translate it. He only translated one of the texts, which is not the fundamental, or you could say the fundamental 7 Abhidharma text. The Chinese 7 Abhidharma text, when they say Chinese, originally is in Sanskrit, supposedly in Sanskrit. No, it's the Pariyaya and Abhidharma Hirtaya, but it's recently translated by a German guy, I think. That's only one you translate. There are so many Abhidharma texts, but the fundamental 7 Abhidharma texts so far been fully translated into English. It's only done maybe just 10 years ago. Just one. I guess so. No. But, and there are so many other Abhidharma texts that, like Abhidharma Kosa have been translated, but that is not the fundamental 7 Abhidharma text in the what we call. Anyway, you can imagine that translate Abhidharma text, I think it's very simple, easier, because even easier than translate sutra. But because it requires a lot of knowledge to understand the terminology, so that's the reason. Otherwise, just like math, is the word by word is not really grammatically very complicated, you know. So anyway, it's just another thing. Yeah, it's not translated. Only one, I guess, as far as I know, in the European language. Yeah. Okay. But you do have in Sanskrit some of them, and of course, very partially because all the books were burned, you know, long ago. And with only now mostly 10, partly in Tibetan, but mostly in Chinese, the translation. Yeah. Okay, all right. Any other questions? Any comment?
So in the book, it says that Yamaka is not being translated.
Yeah, but Yaman is very short, yeah.
So we can consider all 7 has been translated now?
The Pali one, yes. The Pali have 7 Abhidharma, fundamentals Abhidharma text, right? I think, as far as I know, the last one is not translated too. Not the last one. The one, what they call, Patana.
Oh.
Patana is not fully translated too. It just only have the, like part 1 been translated, but it's not part 2, as far as I know. But I'm not sure about that anyway, yeah. So.
How long was it between the time that these ideas emerged and the time that they were committed to paper? In other words, I'm comparing this to the Bible, where it lived as an oral tradition for about 800 years before it was first put on paper. And then it was translated through many languages.
I think it's 400 years, maybe. 400 years, not 800 years. But actually,
Bible?
Yeah, as far as I know. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, but actually, all these Pali texts, especially the Pali texts, so they do have a clear, historical evidence. So it's been committed into written form before Christ. Actually, it's almost before Christ. I forgot how old is it. So 20 something, or 60 something. I cannot remember exactly now. Yeah, because that when Sri Lanka, it was committed in the written form. It happened in Sri Lanka. So because when they have war, they always have the war between the South Indian people. So and then when they feel like they might be completely destroy that so-called Buddhist culture, and that's why they committed, and that's why they gather together and put it in the written form. So that is, so you could say that before Christ, actually, certainly there's been committed written form already, yeah. But the others, for sure, that in India, you do have that too, because archaeological, you could find some evidence, but however, there's no any historical record about those things, yeah. As I say, the Indians are not tend to record those things very well, yeah. So you could say that actually it's quite reliable in a sense, because that, like the Pali text is why it's so be regarded as so important. If you look at the historical perspective from historical evidence, it's because the Pali text actually for sure it's been written down before Christ already. Those all texts there. Now what we call this, mentioned is Tripitaka, the three canon. This all there even before Christ already. Yeah. But definitely that's a long past earlier than the Chinese, because the Chinese started to translate text during the 2nd century. However, those are only few of the sutra. Now you can do the comparative study. What are they? But as a whole canon, then China started to translate like as a main body of the canon, so might be from 5th century. So that's really 500 years after the Sri Lanka. Okay, yes. Okay, next one. That both these collections, yeah.
Both these collections consist of 7 books, but their titles and contents vary considerably. Nonetheless, they share 2 tasks in common. In the first place, they attempt to give a systematic and exhaustive account of the world by breaking it down into its constituent physical and mental events. Dharma. Secondly, they both contain works which address various points of dispute that arise out of the preceding exercise. Though the status of the Abhidharma as word of the Buddha may have been challenged, the stamp that the Abhidharma system, methods, and debates have left on subsequent Buddhist thought is indisputable. They provide the terms of reference and determine the agenda which result in Mahayana school of Madhyamaka.
Yogacara.
I will just see whether they have any question or any comment.
What's Madhyamaka?
中道,中论. No, 不是一切理论，一切是。But it's a way usually in the Mahayana Buddhism, especially if you study Tibetan Buddhism or even the Chinese, they always forget the earlier teachings, but they only very emphasis on these 2, like the Madhyamaka and the Yogacara. And even this someday, depend on what system you follow. Some systems still pay kind of highly respect to the Abhidharma, because they know if you don't study Abhidharma, it's very hard to understand what this Madhyamaka and Yogacara is about. Well, basically Madhyamaka means generally you might heard about if you have read some paper about Buddhism, the emptiness school, about emptiness, anything this emptiness, that's called a Madhyamaka. Okay. But even though Madhyamaka doesn't mean emptiness, but Madhyamaka means the middle way, middle path, or middle way. But then, I'm saying that, but generally mean that Madhyamaka means emptiness school. Right? I'm sure that in America is very popular. Everything about emptiness is definitely, before you really know what the Buddhist content is, you always know about Buddhism, talk about emptiness, like that. The same thing as Chinese. If you're really into the Chinese Buddhist philosophy, and that's what and the Yogacara is what we call, sometimes in Chinese like to translate as more like the mere consciousness school, 就是唯识, but actually that was not really a proper name. Somehow I don't know when did they invent this term. But the Yogacara, it's basically mean it's based on the teacher of yoga. So it means it kind of like carry the mean against the emptiness kind of idea, mean like too much of philosophical rather than practical side of it, like that. That's called the Yogacara. But certainly they also have their kind of specific kind of system. But the same thing, it's the same thing also. They actually also believe that if you want to really thoroughly study well in Yogacara, then you have to study Abhidharma. But that's just some of the people version. But lots of Mahayana, the other school, Mahayana, I don't think they will agree with me. They will, not only me, but they will agree with that way of that voice, you need to study Abhidharma in order to understand well Madhyamaka and Yogacara. But if you really do the textual study, you'll find yes. But if you just don't care about the textual study, you just care about the essence or the meaning, of course, you don't need anything. You just read it through, and it depends how you understand that, the Madhyamaka and Yoga. Anyway, just keep it understanding. Madhyamaka means mostly talk about emptiness. Yogacara generally is a vast, much more big subject, but certainly they try to emphasize the practical side of it, kind of like praxis, perspective. And the Madhyamaka is more like the philosophical perspective. Yeah.
So, you mentioned about middle way for the Mahayana. Madhyamaka. So I'm more familiar with that term, but can you explain a little bit about emptiness? What is exactly that?
Because the middle path is generally, there's one of the very famous texts called Madhyamika Karika. It's written by the Nagarjuna. Some people believe he was born about 2nd century. So he had to, for example, if you study Tibetan Buddhism, not all of Tibetan Buddhism, but especially Gelug school, and all you have for sure, if you study Gelug school, you said you are a scholar of the Gelug school, you never read the Madhyamika Karika, then you definitely, that's almost impossible. That's almost like the Bible, rather than the early text, whatever. They don't care those things, but they only care that. So the text is called Madhyamika Karika, mean the Madhyamika means the middle, right? Or sometimes you can understand the middle as the middle, or sometimes you can understand the people who follow the middle, right? Because depending how you understand the word Madhyamaka, or because it can be defined as kind of person doing that, or you can define that as a kind of nature of that, I think normally Chinese tend to understand that as more like a nature of the nature of the middle path, okay? And the nature of the middle path is certainly has the center concept is the emptiness. In other words, the Buddha talk about dependent origination. So I'm not going to say that because maybe in the future we're going to discuss that too. So it's the dependent origination. So how we really understand the dependent origination, what is really the most important message we get. So in early Buddhism, the important message we get is what we call the Four Noble Truths, so that you attain the liberation, But to the Madhyamika school, it's what they think that the most important of the Abhisamaya, the Xianguan, that means the direct perception, it's the emptiness. Nothing really exists, kind of like that. But it's not saying there is a void, because void is also existing, right? But even the void is kind of, you can understand it's because of relatively, anything is relatively or conditioned, it's not a real one. So that's what we call the emptiness. Yeah.
How would it compare to something that is Zen?
Oh, that's another big subject, because Zen, the Zen, of course, came to China. Sometimes depending on how you understand Zen in terms of practice, or in terms of philosophy, or in terms of social movement. I take it actually largely with the social movement first against what the Chinese belief system, as a Buddhist system in China.
Okay.
Because the Chinese, because that's why it depends. But I don't think people will explain that way to you. They think that Zen, the word, if you look at the word, Zen just original mean dhyana, mean a kind of meditation state. Yeah. But depending on how you like to describe what a Zen is. Anyway, it's a big topic. But it's good that you ask questions, but at least now you're getting interested in what the Buddhist, whether it's culturally or whether doctrinally or whether because of movement. Okay. Yes?
So the example given is from Mahayana school. Are there, is that the biggest influence from the Abhidhamma in later texts? Is that why he's giving the Mahayana school's two texts as an example, or is there also Theravada?
The interesting thing is that all these Mahayana, so-called Mahayana, I want to use a term, not the masters, but like genius, or you could say the founder of Mahayana. Usually the Mahayana have the founders, for example, like the one who write the Madhyamika, like Nagarjuna, Longshu. Let's say Longshu Posha, Nagarjuna, He had written the Madhyamika, the Karika, and he had written several texts actually. But he is very clear he studied Abhidhamma before. The same thing as that those like Asanga, Vasubandhu, those who write a very important treatise on the Yogacara school, and they are expert on Abhidhamma. So, because it's also for the textual study, it's very clear because sometimes what they argue, they point the thing, is clearly actually they borrow from Abhidhamma. That whether they agree or disagree. And Yogacara school are much more agreeing with the Abhidhamma. But the Madhyamika is, I don't think that they don't agree. This is just my personal opinion. It's more like, don't think too much of that complexity. Why don't you just go to what he believed, to what the Buddha originally wanted to try to tell us, have less complex system rather than a simple, but maybe in a contemporary way. I mean, when a contemporary, I mean in his contemporary way, his current way to understand the what we call this dependent origination.
So why is he using the Mahayana text as an example here as an influence of Abhidhamma text? Are there equivalent Theravada texts?
Next paragraph.
Okay, thank you. All right, why don't we just, next one, read the next paragraph, apart from the, yeah.
Apart from the canonical Abhidhamma, a great variety of Abhidhamma manuals exist. These manuals aim at introducing essentials of the complicated canonical systems. For the Theravadians, Bodhisattvas,
No, Buddha.
Buddha-Gosas, comprehensive Visuddhimagga contains much of their Abhidhamma system. Chapter 14 to 17 form a self-contained section entitled The Ground of Understanding, Punya Bhumi, which is essentially an introduction to the Theravadian Abhidhamma. A more direct introduction to the canonical Theravadian Abhidhamma is the Abhidhammavatara, Introduction to Abhidhamma, written in the 5th century by Buddhadatta, a contemporary of Buddha-Gosha. But the most commonly used introductory manual in the countries of the Theravada Buddhism today is the 12th century work of Anuruddha, the Abhidhammata Sangraha, compendium of the topics of Abhidhamma.
Okay. So we must understand, apart from the canonical Abhidhamma, right, like there are 7. Actually, you look at this table 8, you could see that there are 7 of 8, right? You could see the table, right? And the Dhammasangani, Vibhanga, Tadukata, Pukara Banyati, Katavatu, Yamaka, Patana. And then you have this other school, somebody will find very difficult to read, the Sarvastivada, okay? Right? Could you see that on the table, right? And the Sarvastivada believe that they are one of the main texts, and out of them there are 6 food. In other words, you could contain 6 or 7. The main text is the first one, Yana Prasthana, Fazhirun in Chinese. Okay, Jnana Prasthana, and then you have Prakanabhada, Vijnanakaya, Dharmaskanda, and then Prajnana Sastra, and Taduka and Sankiti Pariyaya. Okay, I guess Sankiti Pariyaya is one of the earlier among the Jnana Prasthana because. So they are the 7 Abhidhamma. But these both actually, they have quite a different system. If you don't understand that, I have to think about what else, kind of like, I'm not sure. I can only think of car, but maybe it's not true because I don't know anything about car at all. So I just think that, let's say the car have 4 wheels and the what you call the brake and all sort of essential thing, but how they compose a car, what kind of system, how they make the car more efficient, actually the system could be different, But few of the important components is the same, they will remain. So, and then also we must understand actually nowadays people study Abhidhamma, they don't study from the 7 texts. because let me tell you the truth. One, the big truth is because very hard the teacher finish all the text, okay? So imagine, I honestly, if you can finish, I always joke with the people, if you can finish the let me see which one here called, the last one, no, Patana, the Patana, the conditionality. If you can finish the whole just reading by it without boring, without bore, without difficulty, you are the master already. Try to find the text, and then you will know what I'm saying. You almost are reading the mathematics. All these formula they are all. And without the basic knowledge of this, what they are, and then you read that, you can just like, what the? Okay. But anyway, so of course, because Abhidhamma to study is so difficult, you have to imagine this is before Christ, okay? It's really, imagine that's really a huge mental training kind of thing. And, but usually when you study in the Pali tradition, when I say Pali, it's only in Pali, but so they only they started from the one that written in 12th century by Anuruddha, called Abhidhamma Atthasangha, which I'm not really fancy actually. After some time I read it, and I think it's a good word, but you know, it's always like that. It's best to back to the original one. Because there are lots of things missing there, and people have a lot of misconceptions in certain things as well. If you read original, you find that no, not necessarily like that. But that's one actually, which is I hope one someday somebody will translate. Still not left untranslated. That which written in the 5th century. Even he lived in the time like the Buddha Gosa, who write the treatise called. That's one. Can you just borrow me the book? The Visuddhimagga, the part of purification. Yeah, like that. And he left to get the same time, but he did write one of the manual for learning Abhidhamma. That's called Entry into Abhidhamma. But that's unfortunately still nobody, not even people doing the research on that. No translation. It's only in Pali. Okay. Okay. Why don't we take a little break? Say 5 to 10 minutes break. You guys, if you don't know each other, you can chat a little while and take some water. So, and I don't want your head, have a difficulty with all this Abhidhamma. Okay, okay. Right, see you later. So.